Hello, my name's Aviva, and today I wanted to share with you a bunch of romance book recommendations with the grumpy sunshine trope. So I have made this video once before in the past, probably like a year or so ago, but either way, if you did miss it and you want to check it out, I will have a link for it down in the description below. But today I basically have a completely new stack of books to share that all have this trope in it. I absolutely love the grumpy sunshine trope. It is definitely, without a doubt, one of my favorites of all time. And I think why I feel that way is because in real life, I am the grump and my husband is the sunshine. So I really love seeing that dynamic play out in books. But either way, with that said, today I have a ton of books to share with you that I absolutely love that all have this trope in it. So let's not waste any more time and get straight into it. So first up, I have a recent read of mine, which was A Nordic King by Karina Hall. I don't know how to say that author's last name, but either way, I absolutely loved this book. So in this story, you're following this guy who is a single dad, and he is also the king of Denmark. And 2 years ago, his wife had died in a car accident, and now he has to take care of his two little girls by himself. So he ends up hiring a nanny, and then it's obviously going to end up being their romance. So the thing about this book is that he is so freaking grumpy. Like, he has a lot of things that he's dealing with the way that his wife had passed away 2 years ago, and he is just very hard to get close to. He has a very rough exterior, and basically she is all sunshines, all happy-go-lucky, and she's obviously going to come into his life and just mush him out and make him so cute and so adorable, and he's just going to fall so hard for her. But there's also so much tension and banter between the two of them, and I just loved seeing the dynamics of how they were he was very reluctant to get close to her, but obviously he just couldn't help himself. So just the way that the story went down and the romance aspect of it was absolutely amazing, and I really did love the idea of the grumpy sunshine in this story. So if you have not read this yet and you like the idea of royalty and things along those lines with a nanny romance, a little bit of forbidden aspect, definitely recommend giving this one a shot. But either way, after this, I have a couple of Mariana Zapata books to share with you that I did not originally share in my previous video that I made with this trope. And the first one I have to share is Under Lock by Mariana Zapata. So this one is a motorcycle romance, and in this story, you're following this guy named Dex, who is the owner of a tattoo shop and is also in a motorcycle club. And he's going to end up having a romance with his new receptionist, who happens to be the little sister of one of the guys that he's in a club with and is friends with as well. So basically, her older brother is in a motorcycle club with this guy who owns a tattoo shop, and she's going to end up being this guy's new receptionist. And it is very grumpy sunshine. She is just very sweet, very nice, and just trying to have a smile on her face the whole time and do a really good job in her new job. And basically he makes it really hard for her. He is he's always grunting and looking at her with a really stern face, and he is really hard to get close to. But obviously slowly he's just gonna fall for her, and it's gonna be such an adorable romance. And this is definitely one of my favorite Mariana Zapata books. I mean, yeah, I have 6 or 7 favorites by Mariana Zapata out of her 12 or 13 books that are out there, but basically I love this book. I've read it twice. It has a great grumpy sunshine thing going for it, and if you have not read it yet and you like motorcycle club romances, I definitely recommend giving this one a shot. But either way, after this, another Mariana Zapata book that I wanted to share with you is Luna and the Lie. So in this book, you are following this girl who works for a mechanic shop. She kind of details old vintage cars. She's the painter in this mechanic shop. And basically a couple of years ago, I don't really remember the details, but basically one day she told a lie for her boss, and now he feels he owes her something because of the lie that she had told for him. So at the beginning of the book, you basically get to see that he's always asking her, he's are you ready to cash in that favor that I owe you, yada yada yada. And obviously at the beginning of the story, she's finally going to cash it in, and then it's obviously going to be their romance. So it kind of has this boss employee sort of relationship. It also has a very big age gap. I think it's 26 to 42 or 43 or something like that. But either way, that's classic of what Mariana Zapata is known for. She's known for her slow burn romances, she's known for her age gaps, and she's known for her grumpy sunshines. And this definitely has all three of that. So I really did love the dynamics of these two people, because this girl is the epitome of sunshine, almost to the point where it was a little bit too much. At times, she would just let people kind of roll all over her, because she always wanted to be nice and happy, and she didn't really let things get to her, even though at some points I'm why is this not bothering you more, And then on his side, he was extremely grumpy. He just was always don't come near me, I don't want to talk to you, please leave me alone, sort of thing. And it was just a really cute dynamic, and I loved this book for so many freaking reasons. So I really hope that you check this book out if you are a fan of Mariana Zapata and you have not read this one yet. So yeah, That is Luna and the Lie by Mariana Zapata. But anyway, after this, one more book that I wanted to share by you from her is From Look Up with Love. So this is an enemies to lovers, reverse grumpy sunshine sort of thing. So basically in this story, she is actually the grump and he is more of the sunshine. But honestly, I could be wrong about that. He might be a little bit grumpy as well. But I always look at this book and I remember it being a little bit more of just like anti-grumpy sunshine, because I know for a fact that she was very, very grumpy. So either way, it definitely does have that dynamic going on for it. And it also has a bit of an enemies to lovers thing, a lot of bantering stuff going on. And basically these two people are like professionals, ice skaters or whatever it's called. And at the beginning of the story, they're going to end up getting paired up to have to work together, but they really do not get along. They've been around each other for like their entire lives. Like he is her best friend's older brother. And at the same time, they're both professional ice skaters. So they're always like, practicing in the same arena and everything like that. So they really just do not get along. At the beginning of the book, they're going to be forced to work together. And obviously it's going to end up being their romance. And I really did love this book for a lot of reasons, but one of the big reasons was that it had that grumpy sunshine sort of aspect going on for it. And it was a little bit more unique because in this instance, she was the grump and he was more of the sunshine. He might have been a little bit grumpy, but I feel like it still had that grumpy sunshine dynamic. So I'm just sticking it into this video anyway. But either way, yeah, From Look Up with Love by Mariana Zapata, one of my favorite books by her for sure, like literally like top 3 without a doubt. So if you haven't read it yet, I definitely recommend giving this one a shot pretty soon. But either way, after this, I could not help but add this next book into this video because it is like one of my all-time favorite grumpy sunshine sort of romances, and that is Daisy and Reich from Hot House Flower, which is one of the books in the Addicted / Calloway universe. So this is technically the second book in the Calloway series, but it is also part of the Addicted / Calloway series. So yeah, very confusing, but it's by Kristen Becker-Ritchie. I have talked about this book a lot on my channel. It's also very, very, very popular, so I won't go into too much detail about it. I will just have a video linked in my description below of how to read the Addicted / Calloway sister sort of series. But basically, if you are not familiar, this is an age gap grumpy sunshine romance. So there's a lot of stuff going on in this book. I'm not going to give it too much detail, but basically one of my favorite grumpy / sunshine characters, like he is one of my all-time favorite grumps and she's one of my all-time favorite sunshines. And when they come together, oh my God, it is just perfect. So if you're not familiar, watch the video that I'll have linked down below because this is one of my favorite series of all time and one of my favorite books from my favorite series of all time. So yeah, couldn't help but add this one in, even though I did not explain it very well. But anyway, after this, another book that I wanted to share with you is Terms and Conditions by Lauren Asher. So this is technically the second book in the Dreamland Billionaires companion series, and this one is a marriage of convenience. You're following this guy who is about to become CEO to basically like Disneyland / Pixar. Like that is the kind of company that his grandfather had founded in this story. And basically his grandfather died and left a will that every one of his brothers had to fulfill some requirement before they can go and inherit their portion of the company. So his requirement was that he had to get married and have a child, except he really does not care to do that. Like he is all about work. He really doesn't care about like getting close to women or anything like that. So he basically, like after a couple of circumstances, ends up having a marriage of convenience with his secretary. And it definitely has that grumpy sunshine vibe. Like he has no interest in her and she is just like, his secretary trying to make his life easier. She is very positive and he is very just like, all about work and very strict and everything like that. Like always wearing a suit sort of vibe. And basically it was just a great time. I have read every single book that Lauren Asher has ever published, and this one without a doubt is my favorite of hers. So if you have not read it yet and you like Marriage of Conveniences, I without a doubt recommend checking this book out. So yeah, that is that. But anyway, after that, another book that I wanted to share with you is Focus by Carla Sorensen. So this is the first book in the Ward Sisters companion series. And in this story, you're following this guy who is a professional football player and he just got traded to a new team. And then happens to be the girl works for this team. And then they're going to be forced to work together on this specific project that's going on this season of sorts. The only thing is that this guy really does not like this girl because they do have a bit of a history. 9 years ago, when she was in high school and he was in college, like about to be drafted and things like that, she had a massive crush on him and she also lived next door to him. So at one point she ends up going next door, climbing through his window and starting to make out with him. And he's a guy in college, so he's not going to say no to a random girl coming through his window sort of thing. Except because she was underage, he almost got into a lot of trouble because of it. He didn't, but he almost did. And that kind of scared him off of like being close to girls like for the rest of his career. So he basically after that decided that he's going to be celibate and he's just going to focus on the game. And that is exactly what he's been doing for these past 9 years. And then all of a sudden he gets traded. This girl comes back into her life and he just wants nothing to do with her. But obviously they're going to be forced to work together, so they're not going to be able to help but being close to each other the whole time. And then obviously he's going to reluctantly fall for her, and it's just going to be an adorable romance. But happens to be, I just loved the vibe of him and then obviously her, but like just the way that like him being around her started to like warm him up and like, you know, calm him down and make him like realize that there's more to life other than football. I just really loved seeing that progression of him throughout the story, and it was a really good Grumpy Sunshine sort of situation. So basically, if you haven't read this book yet, I definitely recommend giving it a shot because I really did enjoy it at the time that I read it. But anyway, after this, another book I wanted to share with you is Ignite by Melanie Harlow. So there's a lot of really good stuff going on for this book. Basically, you have this guy who is a divorced single dad and also happens to be a grumpy firefighter. And at the beginning of the story, he's basically going to be moving into a new house, and then he's going to meet his next door neighbor who happens to be a very sunshine girl and is like either 10 or 12 years younger than him, something like that. So basically there's a very big age gap going on as well, and it's going to end up being their romance. So it was a very cute story for a lot of reasons. I loved basically every aspect of it. I believe I gave it 5 stars at the time that I read it. So if you have not checked this book out and you want a very quick and easy read with a little bit of like steam in it, then I definitely recommend looking into this book a little bit more. So yeah, that is Ignite by Melanie Harlow. But anyway, after this, another age gap romance that I wanted to share with you that happens to be a Grumpy Sunshine story is A False Start by Elsie Silver. So this is the 4th book in the Gold Rush Ranch companion series, and it has a brother's best friend sort of thing going on for it. Basically, at the beginning of the story, this girl is in a bar and she ends up hooking up with this random guy, and she later finds out that it happens to be her brother's best friend. So obviously at the time, they basically just like pretend that it never happened, and then a couple of years later, after they've been avoiding each other this entire time, they basically end up getting forced to work together over the summer on one of these like horse ranches that happens to like, you know, be the main thing about this entire series. It's all taking place on different horse ranches, and basically it's going to be a forced proximity sort of thing, and they're kind of trying to avoid each other, and he has a lot of things going on in his past. He is very grumpy. He's very like, I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to look at anybody. Just leave me alone. But he can't say no to this girl, and she is like the only one that he really like lets into like his life and everything like that. And it was just a really cute story, and happens to be, it also happens to have a very large age gap. I believe it was like 14 years or so. So basically all around the board, this was a really good time. It was the last book in this companion series, and I really loved it when I read it. So definitely recommend giving it a shot if you want a damaged hero, Grumpy Sunshine sort of situation. So yeah, that is A False Start by Elsie Silver, but happens to be another book in that series, which was a photo finish. It's the 2nd book in the series. This had another Grumpy Sunshine sort of damaged character thing going for it as well. In this book, you are following another thing where it's like a forced proximity on a horse ranch, Grumpy Sunshine sort of thing. These two people basically have a bit of a history. She actually at one point put a nude photo of herself up online, and then he happens to have seen it, and he kind of like propositioned to her of like, you know, offering her money to like basically like, you know, do a couple of stuff online, and she basically said no, and that kind of ended up forming a friendship between the two of them. But it was an anonymous friendship because it kind of took place on this online forum where they originally met, and then they kind of like, you know, they would talk every day, and then something happens, and obviously like, you know, they cut off their relationship, and then it's a little bit later and they end up meeting in person, realizing who each other are, and then they're obviously like don't want to have anything to do with each other, but they're going to be forced to work together because his brother is the owner of a horse ranch where she is the jockey for. And there's stuff that happens that ends up forcing them to be like living in the same house at a time, and basically there's a lot of stuff going on, but he is dealing with a lot of personal things, and therefore he is very grumpy, he's very damaged, he's very like closed off, and she is just going to try and, you know, break down his barriers. So basically it was a good time all around the board. I really loved this book. It might have even been my favorite book from the entire series. So yeah, I highly recommend giving this one a shot if you're into small town romances with a Grumpy Sunshine damaged hero sort of situation. So yeah, A Photo Finish by Elsie Silver. But anyway, after this, another small town romance that I wanted to share with you is Protecting You and Then Fighting for Us. So why I'm sharing these two together is because this is the 1st and 2nd book in the Bailey Brothers companion series, and you do have to read them together to get your happily ever after. This is basically just like a prequel little novella, quick short story to kind of see the origin of this couple, and then the whole damaged Grumpy Sunshine sort of thing happens in this book. So at the beginning of this story, you basically have these childhood best friends to lovers sort of thing going on. These two people, they basically grew up next door to each other, and they both really liked each other, but obviously they didn't think the other felt the same way, so they kind of like never said anything. And at the beginning of the story, they're now in college, and she just came home for the summer, and he finally decides that it is time for him to make his move before it's too late. So that is kind of what happens in the story. They begin to get together, and it's all going really well, but at the end of this book, something happens, like an external thing that happens, not anything actually between the two of them to make a problem, but basically something ends up pulling them apart for the next like 7 or 8 years. I don't really remember the time, but basically at the end of this book, they get pulled apart, and then happens to be the beginning of the story takes place 8 years later or 7 years later, whatever it is, and now they basically both have to give each other a second chance, except he is very damaged and very grumpy from the thing that had happened over the past 7 years, and she is very damaged from that time apart as well, but she really wants to give them a second try, even though he really doesn't want to have anything to do with her anymore because he thinks that like he's not good enough for her. So basically it's like that kind of story, and it was just such a freaking good time. It was about two damaged characters, had a very, very, very heavy Grumpy Sunshine sort of situation going for it, and I just loved every single thing about this book. It is definitely worth giving this one a shot so that you can like understand where these two characters are coming from at the beginning of the story. So without a doubt, you do have to read both of these books together, and it is not that big of a commitment. I highly recommend reading these stories. I absolutely loved every single thing about it, and I will rave about these books until the day I die. So yeah, that is protecting you and fighting for us. But anyway, after this, another small town romance book that I wanted to share with you is Manhattan by Candy Steiner. So this is technically the third book in the Becker Brothers companion series, and in this story, you're following this guy who his girlfriend recently broke up with him, and he's very, very hurt by it. And he basically decides at the beginning of the story that he wants to move from his small town all the way to Manhattan. And his best friend, like his childhood best friend, basically ends up trying to convince him that like he does not have to run away from this heartbreak. He can stay in this small town and have a really good time and be happy again. So throughout the story, she basically tries to do things to make him happy again. So it definitely has that very like depressed to happy sort of thing going on. Like he is very grumpy, he is very not in the mood, and she is just trying to make him happy and trying to be positive. And it had a really good dynamic going for it, especially in the Grumpy Sunshine sort of like thing. So if you like childhood best friends lovers and you like the Grumpy Sunshine aspect and you like small towns, then I definitely recommend checking this book out. So yeah, that was Manhattan by Candy Steiner. But anyway, after this, I have one more book I want to share with you, which is Drive by Kate Stewart. So this is a love triangle, and it also happens to be a little bit more of like the pessimist to the optimist sort of thing. It's not necessarily Grumpy Sunshine, but it did have that vibe going for it. I do think that like depressed to happy or pessimist to optimist is very similar to Grumpy Sunshine, and I really did love this book when I read it. So I really wanted to quickly add it in. So I'm not usually a fan of love triangles, and I wouldn't necessarily say that this book is a love triangle, except everybody likes to label this book as a love triangle, and that's why I'm saying it. But in my head, this was more of a right person, wrong time love story. You're basically following these two people who meet like at the beginning of the story, and she is like, she wants to be a music journalist of sorts, and basically he is a musician, and they're gonna end up having a romance at the beginning of the book, and then obviously something's gonna end up pulling them apart, and then she ends up meeting this other guy who happens to be like the head of this music journal thing that she's working for. They're gonna have a romance, and then this guy is basically going to come back into her life, and then it's gonna be like a love triangle thing with them. But I really do think it felt a little bit more like right person, wrong time. So if you're not a fan of love triangles and you are intrigued by this book, I still recommend giving it a shot. And happens to be, if you really like that pessimist to optimist sort of thing going for it, then I definitely think that you might enjoy the dynamics that happen in this story. So yeah, basically Drive by Kate Stewart, I absolutely loved. A little bit different than the classic Grumpy Sunshine sort of situation, but still a really, really good time and worth checking out if you are intrigued by it. So yeah, that is all the books that I wanted to share with you for my Grumpy Sunshine romance book recommendation video. So I'm curious if you have read any of these books before. What did you think about them? Did you like them? Did you not like them? Do you have any Grumpy Sunshine recommendations for me? Because like I said, it's one of my favorite tropes of all time, and I'm always looking for some more good book recommendations. So either way, with that said, I really appreciate you taking the time to watch my video. So thank you for that. If you did like it, then please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you are not currently subscribed. And either way, with that said, until next time, enjoy reading.